The October 26, 2011 meeting of the Ways and Means Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Andrews. Here. Mr. Barker. Here. Chairman Daniele.
Here.
Mr. Esposito. Here. Mr. Haney. Here. Mr. Hyder. Mr. McCann. Here. Mr. O'Brien. Here. Dr. Quattro. Here. Mr. Tucciarello. Here. Mr. Yolovich.
Here. Are there any speakers signed up for the public forum today?
There is one speaker, and Celia Douglas is not in.
Going once, going twice. Is there anyone here who would like to address the committee at this time who did not sign up to speak? I see nobody. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. You have the minutes of the September 28, 2011 meeting in your folder. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. The next item on the agenda is new business. Madam Clerk.
Referral 11-232.
Moved by Legislator Yolovich, seconded by Legislator Barker. Is there any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-233.
Moved by Legislator Barker, seconded by Legislator McCann. Any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. It's not clear to me from the transmitter, which way is the money going? Is it going from the county to the city or the city to the county?
Through the chair, we reimburse the city. The county reimburses the city.
So the firearms instructor is a city employee?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Is there any other discussion? Being no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-234, authorize the contract.
Moved by Legislator McCann, seconded by Legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, what is the intent of this, or what is the objective of this?
Through the chair, the objective of this contract is to work with Rochester Institute of Technology to have them do a planning study with child care centers around the metropolitan statistical area to assist in the development of a template to assist those centers in emergency planning.
What kind of, through the chair, what kind of emergencies?
Through the chair, any type of emergency. It could be related to a natural disaster such as flooding or a man-made incident.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, now this is federal money that we're using?
Through the chair, yes. This is money from Department of Homeland Security.
Is it the feds that are encouraging us to do this particular thing?
Through the chair, in the 2010 Homeland Security Grant Program guidance, the federal government made it, there's a specific language to work with child and congregate care centers around emergency planning.
It just strikes me, Mr. Chairman, that with all the problems we have and all the fiscal needs we have, that spending money, even if it isn't ours, on emergency planning for daycare centers is silly.
Thank you, Legislator Haney. Is there any other discussion? Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration, I understand that you've stated that this was federal money and this is what it's required to be used for, but do we have any latitude or flexibility in deciding to expend it in a different way with the child care centers instead of doing specific planning?
Through the chair, again, going based upon the guidance that the federal government had set for this particular grant program, we saw this as an opportunity to work with child care centers related to emergency planning. As it stands right now in New York State, there's very minimal requirements. However, through conversations with New York State Office of Children and Family Services, they look forward to this additional assistance in developing this template for emergency planning for child care centers.
Through the chair, so what sort of planning are you going to do? I mean, what will that entail?
Through the chair, again, through this contract, research will be conducted by the Rochester Institute of Technology, doing a random sample of, at minimal, 100 child care centers throughout the metropolitan statistical area, which consists of Monroe, Orleans, Livingston, Wayne, and Ontario counties. And once that data is obtained, they'll review the data, and then, based upon needs of agencies, hazards that they face, both, as I said earlier, natural and man-made disasters, develop a template that all child care centers could use to develop emergency plans.
Thank you. Through the chair, was this funding that the county applied for at its discretion?
Through the chair, the dollars that are paying for this are part of the the 2010 Urban Area Security Initiative funding.
Mr. Chairman, through the chair, I don't know if that answered my question specifically. Do we have the option of not accepting these dollars for this program, or is this something that, I mean, did the county apply for it?
Through the chair, the Rochester-Monroe County Metropolitan Statistical Area was designated as an Urban Area Security Initiative region. The dollars here are 2010 dollars, so these funds were provided to the county, and it's funding that is shared between the county of Monroe and the city of Rochester. This is one project that Monroe County has chosen to follow through on.
Thank you. So it's optional then, correct? I mean, you could have chosen not to follow through on this program.
Through the chair, we could have chosen to look at utilizing the funding for another type of program, yes.
Oh, through the chair. And so what other sort of programs could it have been used for?
Through the chair, there are a host of any number of initiatives, but the programs that UASI, or the Urban Area Security Initiative program, covers relate back to the national priorities that the federal government has set.
Thank you. Would it be possible for you to perhaps provide in writing what those other possibilities would have been that we could have used this funding for?
Through the chair, I could provide a listing of what the national priorities are, but in terms of scope of what those other programs could be, it's fairly well, I don't want to say limitless, but it's wide-ranging.
I guess some additional information in writing through the chair would be helpful. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'll provide information on the UASI program that Monroe County and the city of Rochester have been a part of since 2008. I will provide that information again, as well as what the priorities are set by the federal government. And I will also provide the direct wording from the 2010 Homeland Security Grant Guidance that cited utilizing funds for this type of program.
Thank you. That would be very helpful.
Legislator McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, if I could ask a question, how are the locations that are going to be studied in terms of the child care providers? You mentioned there was going to be a number of them selected. How many was that?
Through the chair, it'll be a random sampling of at least 100 child care centers throughout the MSA region.
You know, there's one particular, through you, Mr. Chairman, one particular situation that comes to mind. I actually have two children that go to daycare, and when we were looking at daycare service providers, we visited a number of places, so I have a familiarity with a number of them in Greece. Let me ask you a question. There's one place in particular that I sort of thought this was an odd coupling in terms of the child care, the daycare center actually shared space with an outpatient mental health facility that was provided by a different provider, but the two different businesses shared one space. Is that the type of thing that will be looked at in terms of when you said that they would either be natural or man-made conditions? Is something like that something that would be looked at? And I guess part of it, I know and I understand that there's a randomness to a study like this, but would there be a way to have a particular situation like that looked at and investigated?
Through the chair, In my description of natural or man-made disasters in relation to planning, that particular scenario related to man-made could be, for instance, someone in the facility who should not be in the facility there to cause harm to children or staff. Now, the site that you're speaking of, I'm not familiar with it. I don't know if that would fall under what they're looking at as a random sample. If it were, and again, it's going to be more, it could potentially be more than 100 facilities. I mean, this will go out. The intent was to work with New York State Office of Children and Family Services. So through their network, this could go out to every licensed facility in the MSA region. So it's potential that it could be hit, you know, that particular facility could be part of the data. It's going to be voluntary in terms of who responds to the survey. However, in order to do their research, RIT has indicated that to do a quality research, at least 100 facilities would need to respond to the questionnaire.
Okay. Thank you. Through you again, Mr. Chairman. You know, what I'll do offline here is I'll give you the name and the location of that particular center, and I'm a little miffed at the questioning of the need of this. Again, that one particular case really stands out in my mind, and I would think something like this, where we do a study where we're making sure that we're protecting children in daycare facilities and making sure that we have a coordinated response, is something that we should all be supportive of. Thank you.
Thank you, legislator. Any other discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carried. I'm sorry. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Andrews? Yes. Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Chairman Daniele?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito? Yes. Mr. Haney? Yes. Mr. Hyder? Yes. Mr. McCann?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Dr. Quattro?
Yes.
Mr. Tucciarello?
Yes.
Mr. Yolovich? Okay, 10-1. Motion is adopted.
Next item.
Referral 11-235, acceptance
Moved
of a
by
grant.
legislator Quattro, seconded by legislator Tucciarello. Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to inquire how we're doing in our DNA testing backlog and our other testing backlogs now, especially now that we've been in the new crime lab for about 6 months, I think.
Through the chair, even being impacted by moving into the new facility, we started out, or ended 2010, with a DNA assignment backlog of 895 cases, and we're currently at 411.
407?
411.
And 11. So you're down more than 50%.
That's correct.
That's great. How about the other backlogs? Are we seeing a similar drop in the other backlogs?
Again, through the chair, being impacted lab-wide, we ended the year at 3,133 cases. We're currently at 2,905. So we're down 228 cases, and we still have 2 months left in the year.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other discussion? Being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Referral 11-236, acceptance
Moved by
of a
legislator
grant.
Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Yolovich. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-237, acceptance
Moved by
of a
legislator
grant.
Yolovich, seconded by legislator Barker. Any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Mr. Chairman, the grant apparently is $314,000. 60,000 is going to Hillside. 50 is going to be used to RIT for evaluation. What is the other 204,000 being used for? I know it says we're going to create a senior probation officer position, but that's probably about 75,000 with benefits or something. Where is the rest of the money going?
Through the chair, Bob Burns from the Office of Probation. The remaining $204,000 goes first to the senior probation officer, and that's an 18-month appropriation, so it's a bit more than what you identified.
Okay.
And the remainder goes about $70,000 for standby pay, overtime pay for probation officers working evenings and weekends. Those officers will interact with police officers in our community when they have arrested a juvenile delinquent.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chairman, is the evaluation that RIT is going to be doing on the whole program or on the hillside part of the program?
Through the chair, it's actually the Center for Public Safety Initiatives portion of the Rochester Institute of Technology's Criminal Justice Program. We'll be evaluating the entire initiative. They already work very closely with the Division of Criminal Justice Services in Albany, the agency that's awarding this money, and they would be evaluating not only the hillside portion, but the probation work with the police departments and the overall effort to reduce detention.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, about 1/6 of the program money is going for evaluation. Is that normal that the evaluation percentage would be, what's 1/6, 16 2/3% roughly?
Through the chair, the research component is required by the grantor, and I believe the dollar amount, or at least the proportion, was set by the application rules. I can double check that,
Okay.
but I believe that was all
No, I take
dictated
your
by the
word for
grantor.
Is there any other discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-238, acceptance of a
Moved by
grant.
legislator Barker, seconded by legislator McCann. Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-239.
Moved by legislator
acceptance-
McCann, seconded by legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-240, acceptance of a grant.
Moved by legislator Quattro, seconded by legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, what neighborhoods are we targeting this year?
Through the chair, there are 3 zip codes selected, 14609, 11, and 21.
Those sound like, are they the same as last year?
Through the chair, I apologize, I don't have that.
Okay, okay,
I can check for you, though.
okay.
Is there any other discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-241, acceptance
Moved
of a
by
grant.
legislator Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Yolovich. Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-242, acceptance
Moved
of
by
a grant.
legislator Yolovich, seconded by legislator Barker. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-243, amend resolution.
Moved by legislator Barker, seconded by legislator McCann. Is there any discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-244, amend resolution.
Moved by legislator McCann, seconded by legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Referral 11-245, amend resolution 23.
Moved by legislator Quattro, seconded by legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Referral 11-246, acceptance of a grant from the New
Moved by
York
legislator
State.
Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Yolovich. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Referral 11-247, authorization
Moved
to
by legislator
advertise.
Yolovich, seconded by legislator Barker. Is there any discussion? Being no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-248, authorize a professional services
Moved by
contract.
legislator Barker, seconded by legislator McCann. Is there any discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before this committee? Legislator Haney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I'd like to inquire of the administration as to what the potential timeline is, or when I might expect responses to the questions that I raised in my letter of a couple of weeks ago concerning the upstate telecommunications situation matter.
Through the chair, I spoke to County Attorney Van Varick today. He said he was still compiling that information. I believe he indicated it would be several weeks. He did not give me a definitive timeline.
Also through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask, and I'm sure the representative of the County Attorney's Office knows the answer to this. Did the county receive a subpoena from the State Attorney General's office regarding the investigation they have in the UTC M3S situation?
Through the chair, not that we are aware of here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I had submitted for consideration at the last legislature meeting a resolution for the establishment for the undertaking of a study and investigation of this matter. I would like now to move, pursuant to Section 545-22F of the rules of the legislature, to take up that resolution. And the staff will hand
Legislator
out
Haney,
copies of those.
was that resolution ever entered into our agenda?
No, it wasn't.
I believe this part of the meeting has to do with unfinished business of the Ways and Means Committee,
Yep.
and if you wanted to resubmit that, I would suggest you do that to the President of the Legislature.
The rules of the legislature provide...
Or obviously you have the option of making a motion to suspend the rules, if you'd like.
There's no need to suspend the rules, Mr. Chairman. The rules of the legislature in Section 545-22F state, and I quote, "The chairman of each committee shall determine the agenda for each of his or her committee meetings, unless a majority of all said committee members request further material be added to the agenda." And that's a majority vote motion. It's not a two-thirds. It's not a suspension of the rules. It's the implementation of Section 545-22.
Very well, Legislator Haney, if you'd like to... Yeah, if you'd like to make a motion, I think you started making a motion, so if you'd like to finish making that motion, we will vote on it.
I make a motion that pursuant to Section 545-22F, that this committee take up consideration of my introductory dealing with upstate telecommunications, and if seconded, I'll speak to the motion. Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, through you
Legislator Quattro.
To our council, is this a debatable motion?
It's not, no.
Roll call vote, Mr. President, or
Very
Mr.
good.
Chairman.
Wait a minute. Why is this not this is not a motion to suspend the rules. This is a motion to add an item to the agenda.
And if
Section
we vote to add the item to the agenda, then we will certainly have the opportunity to discuss it. So right now we are doing a roll call vote.
Where
to see
does
if
the
we're going to
wisdom
add,
come from that this is not a debatable motion?
Are you making a motion to add this to the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, you cannot...
That's my motion, pursuant to Section 545-22.
So let's vote. Let's call the question. Let's vote on whether to add this to the agenda.
Let's discuss the motion.
We don't have a motion yet. We have a motion
We
to
do
add.
have a motion.
we
I
have
got
a-
it on the floor and it's been
Right.
seconded.
For him to speak to the motion, so he is
But,
now in
but
order to
we're,
speak
we're,
to
we're
the
not,
motion.
we're not making a motion. There's a difference. We are making a motion to change the agenda, to add something to the agenda. So
Yeah.
he has, well, if it's added to the agenda, then we will take up the motion in its content, and we can and you will have the opportunity to discuss
Where
it.
is there something in parliamentary procedure? Parliamentary procedure provides that a motion to suspend the rules is not debatable. This is not a motion to suspend the rules.
That's correct, but it's analogous to it. So it's really.
What do you mean analogous?
It's really a two-part motion. The first part is to
Add it to the agenda.
add it to the agenda, and then once it's added to the agenda, then provided that it's added, then we speak to the merits of the motion itself. But this is, again, a two-part motion. The first part is simply to add it to the agenda. And then assuming it's added, then we get into the debatable part, which is the meat of the motion, so to speak.
Thank you, Counselor. And at this point, Madam
But-
Clerk, if
but
we
we
could take
don't
a roll call
adopt
vote
the
on whether or not
agendas.
there's a motion on the floor to add
Chairman.
this item to the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of order.
Yes.
Point of order, it's already been clarified. You can appeal the ruling of the chair if you'd like.
I have an additional point of order for the chairman to consider at this point in time. Robert's Rules of Order is very clear that because our agenda is not adopted, no change, if our agenda had been adopted, in order to make a change, it would require a two-thirds vote. But because our agenda is not adopted at this point in time, we are making a motion to amend the agenda to discuss Legislator Haney's referral. And at this point in time, Legislator Haney has the floor and should be given the right to speak to his motion.
I agree with you that we are, right, we are making, Legislator Haney has made a motion to amend the agenda.
I would like
to,
a parliamentarian to cite something in parliamentary procedures that says that the motion is not debatable.
As I said, this is analogous to a suspension of the rules motion. It's really a two-part motion. In the suspension issue, the first part is not debatable, the motion to suspend. And then assuming the suspension carries, then you get to the meat of the motion, so to speak, which is then debatable.
But to pursue your
Point of order,
logic,
Mr. President.
everything under the world could be analogous to
Legislator
a motion
Quattro.
to suspend the rules.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. There is a mechanism that this legislature has for Mr. Haney to introduce his referral. The first one that he chose was a matter of importance. I believe I always get the two mixed up. But there's nothing to preclude Mr. Haney from resubmitting it to the president and for us to consider.
And that's what I would suggest, but if you'd
And
like
so
to make a
there's-
motion, which you have done, and it's been seconded,
And so I believe that
To
Mr.
change the
Haney's
agenda.
motion is out of order, because we have rules in the legislature that we use for submission of such things. We have submitting a referral as a matter of importance, a matter of urgency, or just a regular submission.
I
Because-
agree with you, Legislator Quattro, although there is the ability to amend our agenda, and that is a majority vote in this circumstance because it was not adopted. So at this time, we'll do a roll call vote to amend the agenda. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Andrews? Yes. Mr. Barker? No. Chairman Daniele?
No.
Mr. Esposito? Yes. Mr. Haney? Yes. Mr. Hyder? Yes. Mr. McCann? No. Mr. O'Brien? Dr. Quattro? No. Mr. Tucciarello? No. Mr. Yolovich? No. 5-6, motion to change the agenda fails.
Is there any other unfinished business? Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On October 19th, a letter was submitted to the President from Legislator Beebe asking that this committee consider as a matter of importance enacting a local law to amend Chapter 357 of the Monroe County Code to enact a real property tax exemption for capital improvements to residential properties. I'd like to know why that matter is not on the agenda tonight. Through you, Mr. Chairman.
I believe that item was not deemed to be a matter of importance, so it was not part of this cycle's business. And I think that's where it is right now. We, as a legislature, have not been given this.
The letter was submitted to Legislator Beebe with regards to the reason that it's not here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I wondered, I'd like to ask you if you or anyone here is aware of how many times this referral to provide property tax relief has been rejected without consideration by this committee. Why is it out of order?
Because there's no item on the floor to warrant that discussion.
It's a question of the chairman related to a property tax exemption that this body should be discussing.
Chairman, right,
and this is the committee that discusses fiscal matters, correct?
Right. Legislator, this chairman or this committee has not rejected that specifically. I did see it, and there was reason why it was rejected because of, but it's irrelevant at this point. So.
In writing to Legislator Beebe, and there's nothing to...
Have you seen that
Well, the answer
letter
is 5 times, Mr. Chairman. 5 times it's been rejected. I have seen the answer as to why it was rejected.
Do you have the letter?
I do have the letter.
Was the letter
and
saying
I'd like
5
to know
times?
if Mr. Chairman is aware of the fact that it's been rejected due to the fact that it does not contain a substantial financial impact statement when it contains the exact same financial impact statement that other property tax exemptions have contained that have been passed by this body.
Legislator
And I want to know through
Esposito,
you,
would you
Mr.
like to
Chairman, if
make
you're
a
comfortable
motion?
with this being a valid reason for rejecting something that should be discussed by your committee.
I agree with the president on why it was rejected. It does impact the finances of the county through property taxes.
What's deficient about the impact statement that is
That's
on
not
the referral?
for us to discuss
That
right
is
now.
exactly for us to discuss. This is the committee that should be discussing exactly these matters. The referral contains a financial impact statement. The reason that it's been rejected says it does not contain one when it does. Mr. Chairman, I would like to move, make a motion by rule number 545-17C of this body to commit this referral to this committee. This is a debatable motion that is a majority vote. If I have a second, I will continue to speak to this referral.
It is not on the agenda, Legislator Esposito. We are in the same boat as we were before.
No referral to commit to this committee.
What referral?
I have a referral right in front of me that's been sent
There is
5 times. It
I
should
don't-
be discussed by
I
this
don't have
committee
it.
so that the people of this county can determine whether or not they're entitled to a residential property tax exemption. This is exactly what this committee should be discussing.
I understand, but there is a process, Legislator Esposito,
Do I have a
which
second
you are
to the
well
motion?
aware
Through
of.
you, Mr. Chairman. with
There's a second
people
to the
that this
motion, Mr.
county
I am
Chairman.
ruling this motion out of order, so there is no motion. And is there any other unfinished business?
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to consider this referral.
Let's make a. Do you have a second? Roll call vote.
A motion to suspend the rules. Ms. Andrews? Yes. Mr. Barker? No. Chairman Daniele?
No.
Mr. Esposito? Yes. Mr. Haney? Yes. Mr. Hyder? Yes. Mr. McCann? No. Mr. O'Brien? Yes. Dr. Quattro? No. Mr. Tucciarello? No. Mr. Yolovich? 5 to 6, the motion to suspend the rules fails.
Is there any other unfinished business to be brought before this committee? Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration, earlier this year, the county airport decided to sever its contract with Normal Communications because they were behind in their payments. And then after that, it reinstituted that contract, and Normal indicated that it would catch up with the payments that it owed the county. So my question to you at this point in time is Normal Communications up to date with its payments to the airport?
Through the chair, that's my understanding. This is an airport authority contract that's approved by the airport authority rather than the legislature. We really aren't prepared to discuss that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I know issues regarding the airport usually get discussed in the Environmental Public Works Committee, but that committee was canceled for this evening, so I'd hope I'd be able to receive a response to my question this evening, but I would accept one in writing if you'd be able to provide one before the full legislature meeting, please.
The chair, can you just clarify exactly what the question is?
Sure. The question is whether or not if Normal Communications is up to date in its payments to the airport.
Through the chair, I will certainly speak to the administrative director of the airport and see if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Legislator Andrews still has the floor, I believe, unless...
Well, yeah, I just want, if I might.
I'll give
Legislator Haney.
Legislator Haney the floor.
This is an airport authority contract, but the treasurer of the airport authority is in the room, namely Mr. Adair. And I think we can short-circuit the process by asking the treasurer of the airport authority whether normal communications is up to date.
Legislator Haney, I believe Legislator Andrews did a fine job of asking the question, and the response will be submitted to her in writing if appropriate, and I don't see
What
what's
do you
wrong
mean,
with that.
if appropriate?
This is not the Airport Authority Board. We are the Ways and Means Committee. There's a difference, but I believe they will make their best effort to find out if that information can be made available to you. Otherwise, I would encourage you to go to their board meetings, which I believe are open to the public. And
I am just totally puzzled by this total stonewalling on any request for information.
We outlined a clear process by which the legislators could get their answers. There's no stonewalling. So,
And to the best of my knowledge, every time you've asked a question, you've gotten an answer. Perhaps not as quickly as you'd like, but you have gotten an answer. And I'm satisfied that that's appropriate. Is there any other unfinished business to come before this committee? Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did submit a letter to the county executive, and I believe you were CC'd as well on October 14th. As a result of media reports that the Deputy County Executive DeLoss briefed the MCC Board of Trustees regarding the search for the new downtown campus. We requested that briefing be provided, the same briefing be provided to us this evening so that we could have a conversation regarding the status of the search for the new location for the downtown campus. I did not receive a response, or this caucus did not receive a response to that letter. And so I'd like to ask at this point in time if you could comment on the status of the search for the location for the downtown campus.
Through the chair, all I can really say is that the Deputy County Executive did attend a meeting at their request, mainly and primarily to discuss process of how that project would move forward if the board did make a recommendation. He was also requested by the council of the college that because those conversations took place in executive session that he not share them at this time.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, is it possible for you to provide any additional information to us regarding the search process and where it stands at this point in time?
Through the chair, it really is not. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any idea at what point in time you'll be able to share any further details?
Through the chair, I do not believe that the college has put a firm date on when their recommendation will be made. So I think it would be premature to make any commitments at this time.
Is there any other discussion, any other unfinished business? Legislator O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have just a couple of questions regarding the budget. And so through you, Mr. Chairman, we've raised the MCC chargeback support by $1.2 million. And I need to know if that's counted against our 2% cap, or are we mandating that the towns would have that increase applied to their 2% cap? This would be with respect to the chargeback.
Through the chair, as recently as I believe it was last Friday, the State Department of Taxation and Finance issued a memorandum regarding that as part of the implementation guide. The community college chargeback will count towards the county's cap and not the town's.
Thank you. Additionally, with respect to this year's budget, when we bridged the gap to balance the budget last year, some of the items in the budget were, we were anticipating $16 million expected from the sale of property tax liens and $2 million for sale of the Gateway and Edwards buildings, I believe on East Main Street, to generate that an additional $2 million. I guess my question is, first, have we done the sales property tax liens? And I guess the Gateway and Edwards buildings haven't sold. Does that leave us in a position where there is a shortfall that we still need to bridge with respect to balancing this year's budget? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, I believe if I'm to answer the question shortly, the answer to all of them would be no. The Gateway Edwards building has not, a no sales transaction has taken place on that particular thing. The item regarding the tax liens, the transaction has not been completed at this point in time. And at this point in time, based on the last key indicator report, we are not anticipating a 2011 budget shortfall.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, so how have we made up for those revenues that we are anticipating, or are we still expecting that there may be sales between now and year end, or how do we bridge that gap?
Through the chair, we are expecting to enter into some of those transactions between now and the end of the year.
And I believe, through you, Mr. Chairman, that we were also estimating $3.3 million from 911 cell carrier surcharge. I'm not sure, was that ever, I think that required state approval, and I don't think that that's happened. Are we still estimating revenue from 911 cell carrier surcharge, through you, Mr. Chairman?
Through the chair, the number that you referenced, I believe, is high by approximately $3 million. I think it was $300,000 was included in the 2011 budget for that. And no, the state legislature did not take action upon that item this year.
Yeah, the 3.3 came from the county executive's budget statement at the time the budget was released. So if that's wrong, I'm not aware of that. And then finally, all of the, through you, Mr. Chairman, 6 largest counties in New York have all now at least proposed, if not adopted, their budgets. And I'm wondering if we have any sense yet as to when we'll see a proposed budget for this year, so that we have some opportunity to begin to work our way through that.
Through the chair, the county executive anticipates releasing her budget on time and in compliance with the charter as it stands today.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, and not to be argumentative, of course, but I mean, you look at like Nassau County, where they proposed 700 county layoffs, police consolidations, and museum closures, and Suffolk County again, 709 county workers. The earlier we can get a sense for the gravity of the situation we face, obviously, the more we can partner in trying to be helpful in dealing with dramatic budget deficits. And the earlier that we can get that information, of course, the better, because we are at a critical stage, and it looks like every other county that has elected county executives has been able to at least propose their 2012 budget at this point. So we don't really know when we're going to have it, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I have nothing further.
Is there any other unfinished business? Legislator Haney.
Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up to Legislator Andrews' question about the proposed downtown MCC campus, will the legislature have to adopt new bond resolutions for that campus? Or I seem to recall that, and it was some time ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, the legislature adopted some bond resolutions that were purportedly going to be for the downtown campus. And I'm wondering if they are still valid, or whether we're going to have to adopt new bond resolutions.
Through the chair, you are correct in the legislature has authorized, and I believe it was, off the top of my head, approximately $10 million in bond resolutions for a downtown campus, and I don't remember what year that was, but it would be, I'd be totally speculating as to what the plan would be as far as MCC and a downtown campus goes, as far as whether or not additional bond resolutions would be required.
Well, as I understand it, through you, Mr. Chairman, the term of the bonds is dated, the maximum term that you can issue bonds for, isn't that somewhat constrained by the authorization date of the bond resolutions?
Through the chair, that's correct. And I may have, with the answer, I may have misled you a little bit. The authorization was issued. We have not, the county has not issued any debt on that particular project at this point in time. So while the authorization's been issued and money has been borrowed from the general fund at this point in time for any expenses that have been incurred for that particular project, no bonds have been let, so no clock has started ticking on the period of probable useful life of that particular bond resolution that was previously passed.
So, through you, Mr. Chairman, the date of the authorization doesn't start the clock ticking, it's the actual borrowing?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. And finally, Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if the administration, if the committee went into executive session, if they'd be willing to brief us on what the situation is about the downtown campus.
Through the chair, with this cast we have right here, no, we would not be able to do that.
Any other unfinished business to come before this committee? There being no further business, the October 26, 2011 meeting of the Ways and Means Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting is scheduled for November 30th, 2011. Thank you.